I've been feeling really drawn recently to sharing more knowledge and wisdom that Chester brings through to me. Chester is my lovely spirit guide. He sits on my left-hand side. It is Chester Bennington from Lincoln Park. He has been with me now for a number of years, and I just keep getting pulled to use him more in order to share information, okay? So if this is the first time that you're coming across my page, it is great to have you here. I'm Gemma Lonsdale. I am a psychic medium and life coach. You can find my other content on TikTok and Instagram. I have just joined Facebook as well. I've just started a Facebook page, so you can find me over there for other content. But I really want to just allow Chester to come through here and talk. I am clairvoyant, so I see, I hear, I feel energy. So that's how he'll communicate with me. And you may see me looking away from the camera. That's just because my clairvoyance kicks in a lot easier whenever I'm not looking directly at something. He has said about the world starting to change. There's a lot of changes that he is signalling to. The first thing that he's wanting to talk about here is weather, okay? A lot of changes will happen. I want to talk to you about some of the specific things that he's talking about. I have talked about this very briefly in the past, but this was a number of years ago. He's talking about freak weather. One of the things that he is showing me is golf balls of hail falling in the middle of summer. He is talking about storms happening in places that wouldn't usually get that sort of weather. Obviously, yes, there's certain places that do typically experience storms, but this is like storms happening in places that wouldn't usually see that sort of storm or see that sort of weather. Freak weather. He has said freak weather. There's another thing that he's showing me is turbulence, like earthquakes, but earthquakes in places that wouldn't normally experience earthquakes. And he has said about science being baffled. Scientists like wondering what on earth is happening here. There is a large earthquake that he's signalling to here. One of the largest earthquakes ever to exist. And he's pushing me over to the west. I want to say that I'm over in California. I don't know specifically where, but it's sort of over that part of the world, okay? So there's something that we can expect to see there. He's not prepared to divulge when this is set to happen. He's just said God's in charge. So this isn't something that we're supposed to know of exactly when it's expected to occur, but there's definitely something. The largest earthquake ever recorded is what he is telling me. Okay, so we're to expect that. So there's a lot of freak weather situations that are happening. One of the things that he is almost alluding to here is that it'll be happening one after the other. So it's almost like they're being compacted down into a shorter period of time here. He's showing me this being something that is happening in order to grab people's attention and to direct their hearts towards a higher power. So this is trying to help you engage with a higher power. You might call it God. You might talk about source energy, the universe. You might, talk about angels. Whatever it is that is for you, this higher power, there's something that is going to be pulling you in towards that. Okay, so we're really being encouraged to direct our focus towards this. So I am going to use the term God. That's what I would use, but you associate it with whatever term you use, okay? The label isn't really important, and it's whatever your own faith, where it sits. So we can expect that. That's one of the big changes that he's talking about here. What else? Chester. He wants to talk about airplanes and airports. Now, I know that we've had quite a number of different plane crashes and disasters that have happened recently. He has said that there's a much larger amount that is set to come here. He doesn't want people to be concerned or too concerned that they're going to avoid airports or avoid travel. Trust your heart. Trust that you will go into things and use your own discernment here, okay? If you're going and you're thinking this trip, just something feels off, trust that feeling, okay? But there is a lot more. And it in Revelations, in the book of Revelations, for anybody who has ever read that, I read it recently. I had watched a few things over the past few years, but I kept dreaming about the book of Revelations, and I read it. And in the book of Revelations, he talks about stars falling from the sky. And I thought, gosh, whenever that was written, my first thought was, could that be airplanes? Like airplanes that have exploded or are falling down, or it could even be bombs. But there's something to do with these planes dropping, which Chester is connecting to the book of Revelations. And I can't help but wonder if it's the planes. And, the person who wrote that book wouldn't have known what a plane was. All they would have been able to talk about was the stars falling from the sky, because that to them is what they knew was in the sky. But there's something here. God is at work. There is a higher power at work. And I'm just seeing a lot of catastrophes in regards to airplanes. Okay, so there's something more that's coming about there. There's the largest number of airplane crashes ever recorded is what he's showing me. So that would signify that there's going to be a really significant shift in terms of things going wrong, health and safety issues. I'm seeing a pilot like hammering on the dash because they're just the instruments aren't working. And I don't know that necessarily. It's almost like spiritual interference or interference from a higher power. And I know that a higher power can interfere in that way because I have witnessed it and I have seen it. There's something happening here, and it's all to grab your attention. It's all set to grab our attention. What else does he want to talk about here? What else, Chester? He's talking about... Now, it's very interesting for me to talk about this because I had posted about this, I think about 3 or 4 years ago. And I had been told that 1/3 of the population was going to be wiped out or reduced. Okay, so the population that exists at the minute is going to be reduced by 1/3. I had at the time associated it with a war that I was expecting to come about between Russia and the West. But I think that the reality is that whenever we're given the information like that, it's our human logical brain to try and connect the dots as to why this might be happening or what's going to happen to cause this. I'm not being shown specifically what, but I am still being given that figure. The very interesting thing for me was that I hadn't realised that that was a figure that was talked about in the book of Revelation. So whenever I read that, that was a bit like, oh wow, that makes sense now, because that is here. And, we are in end times. And I know that that's not a term that's necessarily referenced in the Christian Bible, but we are at a period where the world as it stands is changing. That doesn't mean that the world is coming to an end, but the world as we know it is coming to an end, and we're merging into something different. And that isn't something to be scared of. This isn't something that's really, really scary. We're going into something newer. We're going into something better. And yes, there is going to be a lot of, disasters and hardship and hurt, but there is a purpose behind that as well, I'm being told. There's nothing is ever wasted. So anytime we experience something like this where we're going to be losing somebody or grieving or experiencing hardship in our life, there is always a lesson that has to be learned from that. There's never ever an experience that is wasted. And in order for us to really enjoy the good parts of life and to enjoy the happiness, apologies, my dog in the background, we have to experience the harder parts as well, and the hardship and the grief and the depressions. Rosie, shush, as she'll listen. So that is why it's going to help open us up to more love and to more deeper emotions, and it's also there to help awaken us. If you're on a spiritual path, if you're on a spiritual awakening, you may have already had some of this, information yourself, but with the people who are not on that path yet, there are going to be a lot more people that are coming onto that path of spiritual awakening. And whenever I talk about that, that to me is you developing a stronger connection with the higher power. So whether that is turning to God or starting to believe a little bit more in the wonders of the universe and, you know, that there is a life after death, you know, all of those sorts of things are coming about more and more for people. That also means that more and more prophets are rising up. And I mean prophets as in the biblical sense, people who are seeing things and hearing things and are having prophetic dreams and are having things, you know, seeing something happen in their mind's eye or hearing of something. And all of a sudden it happens in real life. There's more and more of that that's coming about. So we're at a really biblical time. And I wasn't raised a Christian. I don't go to church. I don't connect in with Christianity. I don't use that label. But we are definitely in a biblical time. We are in a time now that hasn't been experienced by people since, you know, probably for a very long time. But it is very much a biblical time. And it's a time that was talked about in the Bible. There's a large amount of changes in the churches. I say, regardless of whether you're, you know, Catholic or Protestant or Muslim, there's a large change and shift in terms of religion that's coming about as well. And like with any shift, it takes time. It is a gradual process. I am seeing people flocking and leaving the religious constructs behind and developing a much stronger connection with this source energy themselves. Like it's almost like we're developing this direct connection to God. We're bypassing the confessional and sitting with the priest and actually going straight to source. And that was always God's intention, is what I'm being told, to have this direct connection. He's saying to me that a large amount of people, they go and they go to church and they do that on a Sunday or whatever it is that they're doing, and then that's it finished, but they don't really go there and feel anything. They don't feel that connection. And what I'm seeing is people really starting to feel that connection and to see God move in the world. So this is all coming about. This is all happening. We're in a period where it's happening now, and it's going to be happening more and more. So the more people who awaken spiritually, the more people are going to awaken spiritually. It's that ripple effect. Your energy, if you are on the path of spiritual awakening already and you're aware of that, your energy is feeding out. You don't even need to do much apart from just emanate that energy out. So that's all happening. Likewise, if you're wanting to be on that path or you're curious about it, surround yourself with people who are on that path and stay curious, because that energy and that vibration and getting chills will rub off on you as well and will open doors and knowledge for you that maybe would have taken a little bit longer. So stay curious, but it's really important to use your own discernment here. We're all gifted with the ability to use our gut instinct, okay? I have an incredible gut instinct and I am so grateful for it, because I would trust that over logic any day. Tap into that, because that is going to be your greatest source of wisdom. So tap into this gut instinct that you have and trust it. If you were watching somebody, regardless of what religion or church they belong to or what they, purport to be telling you, me included, if you're sitting listening to me or someone else and you're thinking, no, this sounds a bit off, something doesn't feel right, trust that feeling, okay? And trust that we're all on different paths and that energy is speaking to you for a reason. And maybe it is to encourage you to dig a little bit deeper and do a little bit more research or meditate on it or give it a little bit more thought. Pray if if you're the sort of person who prays. But trust this gut instinct. It's really important to start to actively tap into this discernment and be wary of the words that you listen to and be wary of the information that you take on board. And that even is relevant in your friendship circles as well. It's really important to discern the sort of people that you keep around you. If something feels off within a friendship or a connection, or you're not too sure of a person, it's absolutely fine to have a boundary there and to step back and withdraw from that connection. It's just very, very important that we trust our energy and trust our own discernment. Okay, so you're really being encouraged to do that. The one thing that he's actually leading me to now is the path that we're walking towards here. He has used the term tribulation. I don't know if that's in the Bible or if it's just a reference point for me from things that I have read about or researched, but there's definitely a time in the world here that I am seeing things being very fraught and people experiencing a large amount of challenges, and that means personal challenges, so challenges in their own lives, but also the world, just as it's almost like collectively we're going to be experiencing a lot of things ourselves. He's showing me here there being something of, well, food shortages is the one thing. Whenever I'm going into a supermarket or a grocery store, I'm seeing that they have, no apples, no carrots, no bell peppers. And it may not be that specifically, but there will be certain food groups that will be missing from the shelf. Or, we just can't get berries or blueberries at the minute. There's something to hear of food shortages. Whenever I'm being led, this is very interesting actually, because I spoke about this about 2 or 3 years ago, possibly a little bit longer. And it just really emphasizes and proves how long sometimes these visions can take to come to fruition. It can take a very, very long time for things to really fall into place. I'm getting shivers. So this is the same information that I had already been given previously. Food groups not being available. So significant food shortages, people growing their own stuff. And I'm also seeing here, going into the process section, if you were to go in to look at the ready meals or the pizzas or the pre-made lasagnas, things like that, and the shelves are empty. Now, whenever I get a vision, I often get shown the drastic end of things. Like the worst case scenario. It's almost like it's the pudding is being over-egged, so to speak, just so I can see the drasticness of it. And it may not be as drastic as that, but there are certainly challenges around processed food and the availability of food products in general. And even the next thing I'm being shown here is conditioners, hair products, hair tints, the lash extensions, the glue used for the lash extensions. So we're going into a period here where there's going to be significant shortages of things that we probably take for granted a little bit more today. He's not telling me what's causing those, but I see them really being significant. One of the things that he is showing me is somebody going out to their garden and they're picking the carrots out and they're cooking a meal in their kitchen from fresh. So cooking from scratch is returning. I'm actually seeing here something where a broth, or how you maybe use like stock cubes or jellified stock, or you might get a can of stock from the store. I'm seeing that stock or that broth being something that you're making at home instead. So making a vegetable stock or a vegetable broth and then siphoning it off and putting it in the freezer. So there's something here of a lot more home cooking. It's funny because I've always said I would be great in a wartime because I'm so good in the kitchen and I can literally make an amazing meal from nothing. But what he's saying is that there's a lot of people out there that would struggle because a lot of people have never really learned to cook properly because of the availability of, ready meals and convenience products, or they maybe eat out or order takeout. So really, he's encouraging you to learn how to cook if it's not something that you're doing already, or it may be just something that energetically, as you progress along your path, you're going to be much more drawn towards it anyway, and cooking from scratch. So there's something very interesting there with what is coming about. He's not giving me a timeline, but he has said that this is set to start in a short duration. I just want to sort of not flag it, but in the past, whenever I have been told short duration, I have seen it to happen in a few months, but I've also seen it happen within a few years. So short duration, whenever it's spirit talking, is a very different timeline to what we would maybe call short duration in our language. Okay, so there's definitely a lot of shifts and things that are changing. We're returning to a much more holistic way of life. I'm seeing kids playing out on the streets, a lot more things being community based, the iPads and things like that, streaming services, not always being available or not always being something that people would demand. And I don't know why. I don't know if is there going to be an issue with Wi-Fi or electricity, or is it just the personal preferences? But there seems to be a lot more of a peaceful existence, and I'm seeing kids playing out a lot more often and people being much more prepared to look out for each other's kids as a community. Another thing he's talking about here as well, and I have definitely seen this shift already happening. You know, we live in a society at the minute where it's work hard, do your 40-hour a week, do your overtime. Our work is connected directly to the amount of money that we earn. And there's a bit of a shift in that. And that partially comes about as well whenever our beliefs change and we start to realise that we don't need to work so hard, that we don't need to be thinking, oh, well, if I want to earn this amount of money, then I need to work this amount of hours. We're coming into a period of abundance. Okay, so people have a lot more freedom. And again, I don't know how this is all falling into place. I have seen it fall into place for some people already and start, like the change happening. I've witnessed some of it in my own life as well. But what I'm seeing here is people not having to work as hard. I get people having more free time, spending more time outdoors, spending more time with family, spending more time on things that actually matter. So experiences, nurturing your soul, nurturing your mind, nurturing your body, and not necessarily being so attached to the ego trappings of the world, like the nice cars and the big bank account and, you know, the job title because it's like a fancy job title. So there's a bit of a shift in mentality, and it's a direct connection to your spiritual path and your spirituality as well. And that doesn't mean, and I want to be really clear about this, it doesn't mean that you can't be on a spiritual path and finding less interest in those things. And it doesn't mean that you're having to do without them. Just because you may be investing more in your mind, body, spirit connection and investing more in a higher power and walking that spiritual path and focusing on a life of purpose. And whenever I talk about purpose, I mean purpose as in helping others from, you know, heart-led perspective, not necessarily thinking, oh, you know, I feel really purposeful in my sales job and, you know, achieving my targets. This is more from a heart-centered space. I'm really seeing more people following that pursuit, but that doesn't mean that you can't still have the abundance, but it's almost as though it flips and it becomes you have a nice car because that's the car that you really want and it makes you happy, rather than thinking, I feel like I need to have the nice car in order to be accepted or to fit in with society. Excuse me. Excuse me. Is there anything else that you want to share? He's just said that that's a sufficient amount at this stage. He's he's tapping on his throat, and I don't know. I don't know whether he's like trying to say almost like a throat sore talking so much. So he's done with that and he's just taking a little drink of water. I'm going to do the same in a minute. But yeah, we're in a very, very interesting time here. And whenever I talk about end times, you know, somebody had posted on a TikTok that I posted, I think it was last week, and they said, oh, this is just fear mongering. There's nothing to be fearful of. I think that it's really important that I reiterate that. This isn't that the world is ending. This isn't that, you know, come Friday next week, that's it, the world has just gone poof and everything has disappeared. It's an energetic shift. There is a shift of us moving into I want to say like a new earth, new world. It's positive changes, a new way of life. It's not that the world is just going to go poof. It's that how we operate in the world and how we exist as people is starting to shift. Okay. And it's a lot of positive shifts. This is a really good thing. This isn't something to be frightened about. This is a really, really good thing. President in the US, previous businessman. I don't want to say the name just in case it's picked up and flagged by YouTube and taken off. Watch him. Watch this person. That's all that Chester's telling me. He's one to watch. Can you explain why? He doesn't want to divulge too much, but he's just said he's not too sure if he has too good a heart. Okay, so there's something there. You're being encouraged to just watch and look. And I don't know if there's something that's set to happen, but certainly that's what I'm being told. So I'm just passing that on to you. So I hope that that has been interesting and enjoyable for you. If Chester brings anything else through, I will absolutely be here to share it as well. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments as well. If you've been getting anything similar, or if this coincides with anything else that you have heard, then love to hear it in the comments. Of course, you're free to disagree with it as well. You're well within your rights. And I think that any comments like that, as long as they're not really abusive, I'll not be deleting. I like to encourage honest, open debate. So we're all coming here. We're on different paths. We're all going to come here with different perspectives as well of, this information and where we're at in life at the moment and where things are going in the world. So just be kind is what I would say in the comments. If you're getting involved in the comments and you're having a healthy debate with somebody, try to be kind, okay? But it's been great having you here, and I will keep coming through with information.